Hello, good morning, and welcome to Never Not Here. My name is Richard Miller, and I'm just loving speaking with you, and speaking in front of you, and speaking to just as many people as I can talk with, and record, and just exchange views and have insights together. And that doesn't preclude you from having an insight either, because maybe something that we say will trigger a whole line of reasoning or a whole series of ideas within you that we're not even talking about anymore. You've gone way beyond us. Who knows? And isn't that the purpose? Somehow the search for truth is not a purpose in itself. The search for truth is reflected in the lives we live. And even if the truth, whatever that might be, who we are, for instance, we say, is not contained in the life we live. The life we live is somehow contained in the truth of who we are. And that must be the point, to reflect it and to relate with people, and to relate with our planet Earth, and it gets fun when it starts to feel like love, right? We can just love everything and everybody, and then whether we realize that we're all one or that we're all separate lovable units, or however that works out, that's just your individual blessing. And so, well, anyhow, help me welcome Brad Scott. And thanks for coming, Brad.
Yeah. Happy to be here, Richard.
I don't know. I'm always trying to just phrase something to start with and saying, okay, well, isn't this the big picture? Well, I mean, the big picture is, more or less, is that we say something's missing, right? And then wisdom, what's wisdom is just to say, well, look at that carefully. And, how much of it is true, and, how much of it is, you can play with what's missing. And obviously, if you say something's missing, it begs the idea that somebody's going to fulfill or add that missing part back in to the mix. And maybe that's a fun part of life, and maybe that's the real urgent and risky and scary part of life.
The tendency of the mind is a function. It's much like a program, and it's if we believe something's missing, it seeks that thing out, because the mind is trying to serve us. It's trying to do whatever it feels is important to our existence, to maintain that. And so if we think something maybe is missing, or something will make us happy, or there is something that drives us, there is something that doesn't seem complete, the mind will create thoughts that create actions to go towards that. The problem is, let's say we want something, something simple like, if I finally get a car, I'm happy, as a child, or something like that. Is when we get it, the mind still does its function. It just continues to function. It says, okay, now what's missing? It has no end goal. It has no sense of I got what I wanted, I should be happy. It continues to function as that protective mechanism. And so, yeah, we're all sort of we're all on a path and looking for something and feeling less than whole. And yet, some of us know we're on the path and some of us don't. And the lucky ones do. And they know that they're looking for something.
Right. Okay. So then that's just absolutely great to recognize that mechanism. And then just to say that it's very useful for a lot of things. When we want something, we can, and we deem it missing, we can go after it. And then it's really great to recognize that then that's the mechanism, you know. So then it'll say, okay, now what? Now something else, you know, let's get the bigger picture of what's missing. And we can then really quickly realize that if we're looking for some kind of satisfaction out of that whole system, that's not going to be part of it, you know. But if we're having the satisfaction in just the journey, like, you know, now we're on another project, and that's the satisfaction and not actually getting anywhere, because we're always in some kind of emotion probably. I mean,
right, and it's actually a bit of it's the distraction that takes us through life. We're constantly distracted in life with action, thoughts, emotion, drama. It's, you know, it's the play of Leela. It's the play of life, and it keeps us busy, and for most of us, it keeps us busy our whole lifetime without ever finding that missing piece. And the great irony of that is that there is no missing piece. There's nothing missing. It's just the mind itself cannot end up in a condition of happiness, of, you know, total satisfaction. It's always serving its function. Its function of problem solving and protecting, and you know, we go through life and we get survival. So yes, we get into higher levels of existence, but ultimately it's there to protect us, and it's going to do that till the end. But the mind, we spoke of this yesterday, the mind ultimately is what has to be liberated too. It has to be freed of its task of constantly seeking and constantly finding out if there is a whole. Because once the mind recognizes truth, what truth is, then it begins to rest. And then it goes on holiday. It says, oh, my job is done. And there was no way I could ever do that. I could never, you know, bring all that to this existence. And it can go back to what it does very well: problem solving, functioning, you know, being creative, all the things that the mind is just an incredible thing. It really is.
So now that sounds like really, really practical advice. You know, in other words, once, you know, you said the mind needs to be liberated, but or something like that. But I mean, the mind needs to be in a way seen through, to see that this is a mechanism that does this kind of a thing, right? And then once you see through it or believe it, don't believe that it's taken us anywhere, or there's nowhere to go in a sense, or what. Once that. You said that then the mind goes to rest. And so then a lot of people have a belief that the mind will never go to rest.
We all know, and we all know what the feeling of knowing is like. But in the knowing, we don't know what we know. It can't be understood. So it can be recognized by the mind, but it can't be understood by the mind.
So it can't be understood, but in other words, in a way, we're all waiting, because we're somehow thinking that something's still missing, right? And
or something needs to change first, or be.
Yeah.
A big one is, you know, we need to be in the right condition. We have to have this body pure, or no meat in it, or, you know, or I have to get over this issues I have with my father or my mother, you know, and all this, and we do all this work and we take forever doing it. And truth is, that doesn't have to change, and that won't change. It'll still be there as a program, as a mechanism. But it you know, it's the resisting it all the time that makes it so real. It seems, you know, they're so active. Why can't it just be there?
I'm trying to get to, like, what is this awakening, you know, and why, and how will I ever admit it, confess that that awakening, I know it. And I want to propose this, that there's a surprise factor there, that if you haven't been surprised yet, and then you're not willing to admit that you live in a greater centeredness, you know, and then you're focused on what's missing. But what is it, you know, do I speak well when I say that there could be a surprise there, you know, that like, whoa, is that all there is?
Yes. And there could be, you know, there could be a disappointment too, because, you know, as seekers, we think we got an idea of what we're looking for. We really do. I mean, you know, everybody's got kind of a concept maybe of what it's going to be, and that, you know, there's no longer bad emotions and no longer, you know, out of control or anything like that. But you know, especially us older people that have been on this earth for quite a while, you know, we simply know that's not true. We've seen these patterns throughout our life, all our life, and that just, why would we expect that to change? You know, so the surprise, getting back to the surprise, is that, you know, I guess towards the end of the path, you start to hear you start hearing different things from the teachers, but you hear that you have it, that you know, you are enlightened, and then you hear teachers say, you know, throw these spiritual ideas out, or there is no enlightenment, or you know, it's just a matter of waking up, or Papaji, stop the search, quit looking, be quiet, be still. Is that, and you know, the great irony and surprise is, one is between a right and a wrong vision that we believed were, you know, inside a body, when really a body is inside our consciousness. Everything's inside our consciousness. Everything's within our field of experience. But the other surprise is that it was always there, that what they said was true, that we were never without it.
And I guess you have to go up against a lot of useless thoughts and useless ideas and useless paths and useless things, and then you think, oh, whoa. And then you can just start to see that focusing outward, you find the main difference. I'm either focusing out, I'm not trying to say there's an out or an in, but what am I trying to say? Let me see if I can get it.
You got it right there. There is no in or out.
Focusing away from this moment, you know, and where would that be? That would have to be into an abstract picture, right? If you got a preconception and you're focusing on a preconception of how it could be, how it would be, how it should be, how it will be, or, you know, how it was, and that's what you're projecting forward. You see the pattern, you know, you're picking up, that's what we're always doing. That's the mind's job totally, is to find a pattern and then to verify that pattern's in the future, you know, it's coming down the road right now. And so then any concentration on a pattern that this is like my process and this is my pattern is totally counterproductive, and you get to feeling like that, and you can play with those things and have fun with those things. And I'm not so sure I can really have fun with them myself. I can have fun with them with our viewing audience, because I'm just trying to prove that they're futile and they're kind of stupid, you know. They're kind of, you know, it's kind of like, is it going to work? You're in a pattern, guys. I mean, how's it working?
Right. And I would venture to say for you, it's, you give it less and less energy, what your mood is, or what you're doing, or what's happening. And when you can get to that, you know, there's this who am I is the thing that when everything seems to be okay, it's not, in other words, throughout all that you were talking about, you were aware of all that action, all that motion, all that feeling, and the thoughts and how the thoughts change, and through that, there's a knowing. And that knowing's there.
No, in spite of that, there's a knowing, you know, not through it, not through the
Right.
thoughts, you know. I notice the stories, right? And they're all there, and I'm having fun with them. And sometimes, and we clench on the stories. In other words, stories bring also sensations, which get interpreted as, you know, anger and so on, or whatever, frustration. And so then the stories are still there, but somehow some stories seem to say a story of all stories are false, or all stories are futile. That kind of story, which is another belief structure, seems to allow being less serious with following any individual story. And that's the funny part of stories, is some bind us and some seem to liberate us. But
Right. Well, let me talk for a minute about this who am I, that a surprise for me was once it was recognized as me, it had been recognized before my awakening, but it wasn't recognized as me, as this one, you know, not the body, this one, but this one, this person, this not even person. I can't get into that, but one of it is the simple knowing that you never are without knowing. I mean, there's only one time you're without knowing, and that's when you're in a deep sleep and there's no dreaming.
I think if we went back to speak a little bit more about basics, you said something about boundaries and the system of boundaries, or let's just speak a little bit about boundaries.
Well, it goes back to when we talk about the realm of boundaries or name and form is when we talk about the physical body and the body-mind organism, okay? And that we think, oftentimes we think we are. And it's in the physical universe, and the physical universe follows laws of, I mean, science knows many of those laws now. I mean, we're still, there's frontiers, new frontiers that they're going into. But when you're born, you have these sense mechanisms, sight, sound, and everything else, but you have no, so you're sensing when you're born sensing, but you have no, even as you look at something, if you ever look at something like a shadow in the dark, you know, you can't quite make out what it is, so you start imagining what it is. But we learn to identify, you know, what things are, what shapes are. They even know, you know, babies will react to certain shapes, and they know mommy and daddy and things like that. But we have to put name to form. First, we have to distinguish. I mean, we all know all the molecules touch. I mean, it's all just molecules, isn't it? Atoms and molecules, whether it's gas, liquid, solid, there's nothing empty.
So anyhow, we know we're born sensing. And I guess what you're saying is that we don't have a categorization system. We don't have a...
And that's all learned.
Yeah,
right.
And then we start to learn that a shadow is a shadow and that it's not solid. And then, I mean, at first we don't even have that, right? I mean, just everything is a movement. It's either moving or still, dark or light. And
right.
So then we build this system of...
So that's our natural state, right? The body's natural state.
We build a system of categories, right? And then those categories are probably the repository of boundaries, right? I mean, you could...
Yes.
Right.
Name and form, right?
Right.
Yep. We start putting a name and a label on everything.
So then there's something that without the names and forms, so there's still the sensing going on, right? And then with the name and forms, then they become objects or separate. And the separate, you know, and to say that they were separate before or not separate before, I guess there was no category, so that there was no way to say either. It just...
Yeah, what does separate mean?
Yeah.
I mean...
And then to try to tie it together and say, well, science, or even to say there's all molecules and they're all touching and all that. I mean, that's okay. That's like I was saying before. There's stories that seem to bind us up, and there's stories that seem to relieve us for a while. And so that might be a story that relieves us or kind of lets us get off our hard conviction that, oh, yeah, no, that's separate. And so you say, oh, well, maybe it's somewhere. And then we might even say science. Okay, science probably knows something that I don't know. But that's, you know, a story that relieves, whereas separate people's out to get me is a story that binds, right?
Right, and you're making a good point, because this is endless. This is endless. This trying to discover, and that's what we're doing in the search for truth, is going down all these different paths. You know, that's what esoteric is all about. Is figuring it out, but really needs to be just. There's something about the human body that can know this source. This body is within this source, this greater thing that's one. There's not many sources, just one source. Many bodies, of course. And this human body can know this source, and it has to do with being a knowing. It's a knowing. It's knowing without knowing what you know. It's a silent, still, aware state. It's subject, not object, and that's what non-duality is all about. Is that anything that can be known is not this. It's the knowing that is this.
Okay, so then we're back in the beginning, and we're building.
But they're together. Remember, they're together.
Yeah.
The knowing and the objects are still together and there. So
Yeah. Well, we don't have to deny them, in other words. But anyhow, I mean,
right.
we're back in the beginning, and we're building this categorization system, and we're saying, okay, well, look at that. They come up again and again the way I categorized it. And who knows if, but I mean, we are able to make a science out of that, out of repeatability and so on. And so then, in a way, we're saying that this is a lot of fun. We can build things, and we can, we can steer and have a program where we steer this way and that way. And then these are people that are around us, and we can build a whole big structure and a whole big matrix that we can negotiate. And that can be a lot of fun. And then sometimes it's kind of like harrowing, because it doesn't always come out good, right? I mean, here
Right.
we're creating this structure of categories, right? And it doesn't always come out really good. In fact, they have these things called wars and
Yes.
fights and arguments and so anyhow, then as long as we're having a good time negotiating the matrix, we can say, well, what's wrong with this? And then when we get stuck, we could say there must be a bigger picture. Something's missing.
Yes.
Right. And so then when we get stuck is when we want to find out what happened. How did this all happen? What was there before we started creating all these boundaries? And then no amount of boundaries is going to help us discover what was here before there was any boundaries, right? No amount of investigating the
Right.
boundaries. Boundaries just means words, right? Even words. Every word is a set of boundaries that has a sound associated with it. How is that?
Right.
How you do an object? You gotta have it's got to be separate from me and separate from the observer and separate from the object next to it. Otherwise, it doesn't deserve a word.
Well, does it exist if you don't know it? If you aren't aware of it, that's the thing.
Well, I mean, you can. I just gave an example of that. I mean, uh, okay, in the last 4 years, 14 million Americans lost their home through foreclosures, and that's 50 million people, right? And
Mm-hmm.
most of us, especially in the spiritual community, we didn't know it. It never crossed our mind, actually, right?
Right.
And in fact, we even said it doesn't exist; it's only a thought. So then we made an excuse for not knowing it, right? And so then, did it exist or didn't it? Well, all of a sudden, it pops out in real strong form. Like what are all these guys are without a home, and half of them don't have a job. And
Right.
somehow we got to swallow that whole mess. I would have rather known it.
Oh, I see what you're saying. That of the group, the
Well,
the
it bites you in the ass.
collective. You,
Somehow it bites you in the ass. You say we didn't know
yeah.
it, so it wasn't real. But I mean, I don't completely buy that one. But I mean, what I'm saying is that when things are smooth and we're always working with concepts and ideas, right? No matter what, I mean, we set our thermostat, and when that works fine, great. And then when that doesn't work so good because there's a lot of animosity and a lot of people left out of the equation, then it's our chance to try to see, well, what's bigger than that, and how can I ground myself in something that it doesn't seem to be such a darn dead end. And then, it's a realization that something's missing, I guess. And we're still working in concepts. We don't even have to say that we're who am I or what's the spiritual sense of me or what's my origin or who am I? We don't really need that to go into to investigate what doesn't work in the conceptual world. And but we do kind of want to be grounded in that and be able to have a bigger picture that will give us freedom and somehow recenter us and allow us to kind of build another story that doesn't have all those hang-ups. World peace. We could build a story of world peace, or we could build a story of ecology, or we could build a story of harmony on the planet. And then basically we're only seeking in order to build that story, build a better story, right? Or are we? I mean, what is the love of truth?
What is the love of truth? What you say about, you're right. We go back to the mind, and the mind is very powerful. very, very powerful. It can create, it can, you know, we can create in our imagination a better enlightenment than there could ever be. I mean, we can create things, anything, but also it is this mind that got us into this financial mess. Yes, it did, you know, and it's this mind that can get us out of this financial mess. But it goes back to a lot of the motivation maybe in this thing, and I don't want to get into a political financial discussion, is this thing of this sense of incompleteness that people want, you know, more money, or they want a home, or they want to, you know, the greed factor, the getting, or I don't have and I need to get. And the mind collectively was driving that. I would say that. But throughout all that, there's an awareness of wanting, of knowing, of needing, of, and it's the awareness that is so constant and so subtle and so still that it gets overlooked. But it was always there. It's always here now. And when you begin to recognize it, even when you know something, when you sit there just quietly and feel the sun on you outside, and you just know for a moment, and you don't know anything in particular, you just are still, you don't even have to have a sense of like the border of this body, you know, you don't feel like you know in that moment you're not just inside the body. There's a recognition, you know, that there's something, without this world, this realm of boundaries, if you don't create with the mind, what is there? What's left? And somebody might say, well, nothing. But there's something there. Well, there is a nothing that's something. And that's why communication fails. You can't communicate it. It's like, you know, if you've seen a shoe and nobody else has ever seen a shoe, you could talk about a shoe all day long and not convey the message. You know, that's why it needs to be somehow triggered in the other person, of like, that's why they need to find an entrance, something, hopefully something, some word says, or some group of events leads to this knowing. And so much of spirituality is based on spontaneous, these spontaneous awakenings. And although, you know, that ends up being the people that write the books and have a great story to tell, is that somehow it all happened by accident. And luckily they were able to recognize what they knew. But all of us have that same thing, is just, we don't really, we're overlooking it.
We spoke earlier of a love for truth. And somehow that love for truth could be maybe translated into an interest in just seeing what's really here. And questions like who am I would be ideas of how to get there. And then this interest, there must be something appealing about this, noticing a greater awareness. I don't know if these are good ways to say it, but something appealing that gives us and keeps us interested, and actually allows people to spend, certain people, a great part of their time just noticing that, hey, I am this awareness, and I can't even help noticing it. And is there anything you can say about this love for truth, and there must be real juicy or something that feels like enhanced life, or what can you say about what is love for truth?
Well, for me, it was always very dominant if I would go to a satsang, or if I have some focal point, but really in a satsang, because somehow, and this is the part that we really have to be okay with not knowing, because Source itself does not know. There's no knowing at all. There's a I don't know, and as that becomes that's where the vision thing comes in. There's a shifting. And when this stillness is dominant and it's just very still, there's nothing lacking. There's nothing that it can't be touched by anything, by emotion or anger or all these struggles we have in life. It's so constant, and we all know that, and we all experience it at times in our lives. For me, it was in satsang oftentimes, and it seemed pervasive, like in the whole room. And that, what I didn't know then was that was me, that was who I am.
Is that not knowing, or could you say that not knowing is a kind of a doorway into silence? And not just not knowing, because there could be anxious not knowing also, but if you're not knowing with grace and satisfaction, and just somehow realizing that knowing is arbitrary and after the fact, then maybe you can be comfortable with not knowing, and then that's where silence lies.
Right. It's the fact. It's a shifting. So as we move along the path, and we're attracted to this truth, this knowing, but not knowing what we know, this knowing that's and it's almost up here like a third eye thing. It's like this third eye is something that's always open. There's something we know. It's just, basically when we know something, it's, but anyway, that's kind of besides the point, because somebody will start focusing on that now. But as the shifting towards the end of the path is that true self is more dominant, that this awareness is more dominant. So the more the focus is on aware, the more you see the suffering. You see your own suffering. You see suffering in almost every thought and every action. Where when you're young, like I see my children in their 20s and 30s, they're go-getting it. They're after it. They're staying busy. They're 100 miles an hour. Well, where is that drive coming from? That drive is coming from a type of suffering of a not having, wanting to get sort of thing. And as this shifts and you go to awareness, it's like hypersensitivity to anything. And that's why so many say that, oh, I'm getting better. I feel this stillness and awareness, but I'm getting worse because now my suffering, no matter how little, seems so immense that you're just acutely aware of the least bit of suffering. And then as you recognize that, well, I'm not that suffering, I'm not those thoughts, that's here, it exists, it's happening, yes, but I am this, I am that silence, I'm that knowing, that's who I am. So I don't need to worry about this other. That's when there's a letting go and a releasing of, well, that can be whatever it is because I know it's not me. And so it's not, this awakening is not a state as much as it's my teacher said, it's like once you know the moon, you know the moon. You just know it. You don't walk around saying the moon, the moon, the moon, reminding yourself. It's not a mantra, this is who am I, who am I, who am I. It's simply, you know it, and you know that you the recognition has to be such that you realize it's you, and you need to see that nothing can touch it.
I want to stay with that for a little bit, like I want to say,
okay.
I want to say, okay, you're saying like this, somehow this knowing or the silence, let's say, becomes more pervasive. And I'm saying, well, it does, your attention falls on the silence because it's interesting. Something about it is interesting. And maybe what we've talked about
or reliable. Let's say reliable. It's more.
Yeah. Well, reliability is interesting then. Okay, so somehow, it seems to me that interest is a direct steering wheel on attention. And somehow it just seems like, okay, this is reliable. And so then that's where my interest is. And maybe it's reliable because it's also showing you that you are free. And then that's a great relief, like, as I was thinking I wasn't free. And so then, because we say, like, when we talk, we're almost saying, okay, hey, you could turn your attention towards silence, because we say that all the time. Go do a meditation practice, as if we would do that, But until we are truly interested means the love of truth. Until the love of truth has taken us, and that's something authentic. It's not just something you paste down like a Band-Aid and say, hey, let's have a love of truth for 1 year. I'm going to swear that I'm going to love truth. No, it's going to come because of some authentic interest.
Yeah,
it's
very
authentic
natural.
Seeing, you're going to see that this is where my life is actually. And so then all the time we're trying to steer life and say, well, I could do this, I could do that, I could do this. No, you have to stop doing, right? And like your knowing has to kind of crash down, we said before, and you're going to have to realize that, I'm saying have to, but I mean, I don't know. The opportunity is that you realize that the knowing is, hey, I just made that up, actually. A lot of people agreed with me, but how can I know that, of anything, right? From the stars to the molecules, I can't really know anything, especially, and whether I can even know my wife, I don't even know.
But you could still know, just itself know. There's something about the human that can know, and like you said, the freedom part is very important, because liberation, these words liberation and freedom are not like, the liberation is of the mind is like, oh my God, finally I know the truth. I know truth. I know who am I. And once known, you realize, well, I've always been this. And that's where the chuckle begins, is I didn't have to do anything. There's no getting, there's no doing, and that's where people really, maybe that's where the entrance is for a lot of people, is just give up, quit, just know that you are whatever you are looking for. You are whatever, like you said, if it's something that compels you beyond, we were compelled to get married, compelled to get money, to have a career, to do this, and then whatever doesn't quit compelling you, you have that. Whatever that's trying to seek, you have that. You can stop looking. You have it. But can we give that a chance? Can our minds give that a chance? Can they say, well, maybe I do have it. Maybe I don't want to
sharing, that's the sharing, because we get into the sharing and pointing, we call it, and you go to somebody and they share with you, and then they say that, they make a lot of statements that when you don't really register those statements as your own experience, you take them on as a concept or a theory, and then say, if you can settle in on those things, and maybe you can realize it too. But the real authentic knowing, which is going back to the love of truth, the real love, I mean, you can say that I want to love truth, but the real love is a total interest in and the interest we're saying is because you see that I'm not all the perturbations in my life. I'm not all the little left, right, up, down, back, forth, before and afters. And then from that, what am I saying? I'm saying something about liberation seems like such a breakthrough that you can really truly fall in love with in an authentic way, and that's what the love of truth is. That what the love of truth is? It's the fact that you notice, hey, I'm free and I'm liberated. And then I guess the second question is like, do you want to just stay in that liberation, or does that mean you can play all the games in the world and you're the best player ever because you're free?
I'm not sure on that second one, but it's meditation is a good thing, because you spend a lot of time with just what's here, just this. You're not confusing by bringing two physical bodies and minds together and trading thoughts and reactivity of each other and things like that. So spending a lot of time alone, but also what you brought up is the questioning is so important. We have to have questions. We have to question, and we have to investigate everything. So you keep saying love of truth, love of truth. What is that? I mean, what if you love truth? How can you know you love truth if you don't know what truth is?
Well, I'm saying love of truth.
Yeah.
I'm also saying authentic love of truth. Whatever that would mean, I don't know. That's what we're trying to poke around in and see what what would make it authentic? So it's my love of truth. It's not just an idea about a love of truth, but it's really, really, really who I am.
And that leads to something else that, yes, you, in the end, you are the only authority for you. I mean, in the end, it's all you. It's all Richard. It really is everything. There's nothing outside of you. There's nothing. There's, you know, whatever you experience is it's Richard. It's all you, and that's the treasure of this life. But it's what was the question you just asked?
Well, one reason one thing I'm saying is that there's a turning point from pointing into really. I mean,
Right.
because one way to say it is that a lot of us are brought here with suffering. Somehow we notice that things aren't working out, and they never will. And we spoke well of that already. That you can want something and you get it from the very beginning, and then you want something else because that's the nature of the mind. It's the go-getter. And if we want to get what's here before the go-getter, we can't use the go-getter to go get it because it ain't, you know,
Right.
it doesn't compute, you know. So then that kind of suffering takes us maybe to looking for other broader perspectives of life, let's say, and we go sharing and go to meetings and go find people and whatnot. And then that drive of that discontent takes us only so far, right? I mean, because you can't really suffer your way into. I mean, I don't know. I don't think it takes you very
No.
far. You know, there's many millions of people that have entered this path, but not too many people that have come out of it. And so then somewhere we have to engage the love of truth, which means this enough of an experience that we realize that freedom. I really love I really love freedom. I don't know, because everything is possible with freedom, you know. And that was the first part of the question, like, what is this authentic love of truth? And you know, we're still trying to point to it to people that are either suffering or other people that are not suffering, thinking they're on top of the world. You know, we're still trying to point to the love of liberty, and which would be my love of liberty is the only one that makes any sense. You know, and how would I light that spark? And then the second part is I'm very puzzled by engagement and disengagement. And it always sounds like meditation or just living in your own fullness. I don't know if I want to say there's no point to it, but I mean, like, we are here in many, you know, with a society and a planet, and we're stewards in a way, just because we have big feet and we make big footprints, so that we might as well watch where we put them. Right. So then I'm asking about once you have freedom, what do you do with it? You know, you say nothing. It doesn't exist. It's really not a thing, or I don't know what. I mean, that's where I'm going.
Mm-hmm. Well, you really do have to become your own authority on this, and you really have to make your own decisions and realize that you have your own conceptual way of understanding things and recognizing things, and that's why you do have to sort of, like, not hold on to what others or what's coming from other teachers, and you need to really investigate everything scientifically in a way that, you know, if it doesn't ring true, if it doesn't, you know, pass the stink test, then maybe you should throw it out, you know. And really, my advice to a lot of people that are really on the path and really, you know, they know there's something compelling them is, in the end, you need to start throwing out all the spiritual concepts, all the ideas of what is, and start going with what you have right now. I mean, that's why so many teachers, you always, you know, they always sit down on their one-on-ones and say, well, let's see what's here right now. You know, and then you do that, but in the back of your mind, you're thinking, oh, but I got these problems. I got these things that I want to know about, you know. Well, the thing is, who you are in this silence, this freedom is here right now, but that doesn't preclude that the other stuff has to leave. It can be here too. It's welcome. It's fine. That's where people say, welcome it all, because you know what do we know about this other stuff that gives us suffering? is we know it comes and we know it leaves. It changes everything. The body changes, you know, the body gets old. The body's life is not meant to be comfortable. So never expect this physical manifestation of the source to be other than a physical manifestation of source, to be other than it should be, that to not age, to not have pain, to not be weak or strong or need rest or anything that it would do. I mean, we're part of nature, you know. It's like our thoughts. Why do we have these thoughts? You know, well, thoughts come and go. We have there's no control of it. We don't control our immune system. We don't control. There's so much that we have all these, but we could talk about this forever, all these false beliefs about our physical body. It's that there's something that's compelling us that we're actually aware of, that is really nice on this path, that we really love. It's either coming in meditation or when we're with others or in at a satsang listening where something's resonating. And the thing is, that something is you. It's not anything else. It's you. It's who you are. And that's something, as that, we wouldn't go back to satsang if there wasn't something there. Well, that something is you. And I say, look closer at it. The next time you're aware of it, it's not really a come and go. It's just that it gets sort of clouded over by all this other action and emotion. Like we talked yesterday, awareness is shifting all the time. So if the body's moving and doing a lot of things, there's a lot of awareness going on in that, because it's got to balance and make that next step and breathe and heart pump and all those things, that you can't be focused on just aware and stillness and silence. But if you're sitting in satsang and truth is being spoken and the mind has no argument with it, then what's there all of a sudden? What seems to just like be there, so powerful and silent and compassionate and not caring but caring, and we have to be comfortable with all these opposing things that we can be free, but this body is never going to be free. We are freedom itself, but this body is tied to the laws of nature, and it's going to follow those laws. Why would we expect that to be different? There's certainly no doer in the sense that we never know what's going to happen next. We've proved that we can try to make things happen, and yet there is a doer. We certainly do things. We consciously do things. This body does things, makes decisions, and changes things, and sets up cameras and does things. So we have to live with this unknown. There's doer, there's no doer. This knowing is the same way. It's I know, but I know this thing compels me. I know I love this thing truth. I don't even know what truth is, but I know it. So it's a knowing and a not knowing. And it's like, okay, this is cool. Why do I even resist this?
I caught something in there that I wanted to ask, and it was,
Okay.
Because so many people say there's no doer, and I kind of recognize that there's no non-doer either.
Right. So quit worrying about doer or non-doing. Yeah. That's the thing. That's an unburdening, isn't it?
Yes.
Isn't that in itself an unburdening or freeing? Is you don't forget doer, non-doer. Forget any of this stuff, vegetarian, non-vegetarian. Forget it. That's not, it's not important. What's important is who you are, or what you are, or, we can change this to consciousness, awareness, silence, stillness, emptiness, nothingness, whatever works for, I don't know Japanese or Mandarin, so I can't say it in those words. So there's nothing to do for any of us. Nothing to change, nothing to resist. And doesn't mean doing won't happen, It's the doing's still going to happen. Life is going to go on.
And so therefore there's nothing to know.
Right.
There's
Nothing
nothing
to
to
remember.
need, nothing to need, nothing to know. I mean, I don't know. Is that the?
It's it's good to recognize in this awareness that, you know, like you seem very aware of many things about your existence, your thoughts, emotions.
I guess where I'm trying to steer this conversation, or have been, and I think with some success, and we've had some good exchanges, is that there's some kind of a transition from pointing to owning our search. At first, people are pointing at it, and we're kind of trying to point at it ourselves. We're mimicking the pointing. And then there's some transition point where I was calling it love of truth, but there's some transition point where this is the really important thing. Somehow we're interested in it, let's say. And we're interested in it, who knows why, because we realize that things we've troubled over for many years aren't really what we thought they were. And so then maybe we don't even have to trouble with them anymore, or our life could be released from all that troubling, and then just see what's creative without trying to solve problems. Just trying to author something new and something, if I say valuable, that's abstract, but I mean valuable in relationship to the society that it seems I live in. And so then that's a genuine interest. And then it would be nice to see that point, be able to notice that point where, I was just pointing. I was mimicking somebody's pointing and pointing in my own life and saying that I should do this, I should focus here, I should practice like this. And somehow it wasn't authentic in the way that I had to kind of force myself to do it. And I was still in the old mold of steering my life and knowing. And when I really don't know authentically, not just blank out or numb up, when I really don't know in an authentic way, I'm already here. And I go, woof. And that was a surprise, right? It was a surprise at bingo. I mean, somehow something dropped and I dropped in, I was always here. And so then that's, and I'm saying now I'm saying that natural interest is somehow like it's something on the horizon says that there's a huge creativity here, and actually it's me. I don't have to look to the experts or to the charismatic people to be creative. And I used to be timid, but now I don't really care, because timidness it doesn't have any holds no promise for me anymore. There's nothing I have to be timid about or reserved or stand back, I mean, I can, and I don't have to have any kind of an image or any kind of I could just go up to someone and say, I love you. And it doesn't mean anything, right?
Yeah.
And certainly I can just go up to somebody and feel it, but I don't exactly say those words. And I love this life I live in, and I love this city I live in, and some huge creativity could come out of that. And so then that's kind of like where I'm steering, is to, if we can notice that point where we're no longer mimicking pointing, and we're really falling in love with our own life and our own seeing, well, then it can't help but just go to the end, right? Whatever the end means, go to that big surprise, right? And that's not the end, it's the beginning, right? It's the beginning of a huge creativity. That's what I'm saying. And also a huge engagement, because there's no engager, but there's no disengager either.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like where I'm going, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, what you're describing is you are source. You are source itself, and everything arises from that. And even this struggle, this search, what a creative thing it is, isn't it? I mean, all the events that led up to where we are right now. Wow, and it's not that we have to hold this attitude of gratefulness, but it's that
Why
it is
not, too? You know,
it's
why
a
not even?
yeah, it's a miracle. It really is. I just don't want to have to force somebody else's, well, if you're not feeling it's a miracle, you're off base.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into that. But the other thing that you kind of triggered in me, Richard, is that in towards the end of the path, it becomes a final struggle of trying to know. I keep talking about, well, you were just a knowing. Well, the problem is we try to know, we try to get this intellectually, this mind tries to get it right up to the end until something snaps and we say, I just can't get it. I don't know. And it may come in, like, even for me, I had sort of an emotional thing going on in my family, and I was very upset, and I went off, and I was with myself, and there was like all this different chatter inside, and different opinions and approaches and angles on this problem. And it came to me, well, which one of these am I? Which thought pattern here? Which idea? It was like a dawning that I don't know. I have no idea. None of these are me. The thing that is aware of all this is me. It's so again, when I say knowing, that kind of can throw people off the path. It's when you give up and release to I don't know, and that expansion takes place. That it's an expanded. I mean, this is. I don't know. It's so clear sometimes that there's a teacher out there now that's talking about you can't find anything outside your experience. And it's so true. There's nothing outside this that's you, this awareness. There's nothing. And you say, well, yes, there is. There's a war in Afghanistan. You say, well, I can't find that. It's not within my experience. The words, there's a war in Afghanistan, is in my experience. And then, and then it's like, well, let's hop in a plane and go there. And we go there, and now it's in this experience. But it's like, it's all here, and yet there's a knowing that everything fits within it. It's like whenever it seems right on this path, really look at it hard and see if it's not you. See if that's not you, and that it's something that's the surprise. It is you. How could it be anything else? How can there be something that's not you? Whether it's whatever it is, whether it's an experience or it's nothing, it's you. But experiences happen within us. So it's just open up to those possibilities that, hey, I'm going to start looking for me. Is that me? That's wonderful. Is that me? It's love. I feel love. Is that me? And that's when the connection's made. That's the surprise. It's like, oh, I never realized that.
Well, there's a lot of rewards to that. In other words, if you're finding love in a lot of different places, then not only does it probably release you and those around you from useless struggles and so on, but it also is very rewarding to yourself. And so if there's a way to relate, that's probably one of the best, right? Because it's a double payback. And
conventional love, yeah, and that needs to be looked at too. What's there? Is it the thought? Is there attraction, a physical attraction? What's there in that experience? So, yeah, love's a kind of a funny word. It gets misconstrued, that this love thing, and how much love, and more love, and less love. We are love. We are love, and it's that simple. And we just trigger love amongst ourselves. But there's also attraction in those things too. And that's another love too, I guess, but not the higher love. That's who we are.
So then that's what the interest in the love of truth is because we found that we are love. And that's the authenticity.
We are the love of truth.
Yeah.
So that's something to focus on right there. What's this love of truth? What is this deep thing? It's us. What is this? What is this thing that we can go on and on talking about this, but it's all love.
Yeah.
The pain, the suffering, it's all love. And it starts from the moment of human consciousness, from birth. And it just goes the whole life. And it's to get us, it's the only way we can know this source is through this body. So, and the clock is ticking for everyone. But, and Richard, you said something earlier about that people are waking up left and right all over the place. But we can't all be gurus, and we can't all write books, and we can't, some of us just have to go back to our breakfast table like me. That's kind of what I'm doing. I came home, same job, same business, same, grandkids, kids don't like me, do like me. It's just normal, awaken normal, it's, and it's okay, because I am so happy to be done with the mess, the search. The search is so messy. It's so frustrating. It's, and I mean, it's even like one less cable bill. I don't have to pay for Satsang now.
So I think I got my answer, because I was asking, what is this authentic love of truth? And you said it's you. You are the love of truth. You are love. And so that's kind of like what we can notice. And what?
Any suffering is really a resistance to your nature. What's there before you even start, and we've been taught not to resist our nature. We're not just allowed as kids to just be free and happy all the time. We're taught very young that, that this is required to survive, that these behaviors and,
this enculturation is a required.
Yeah. But that's just part of the play of Leela. It's got to happen. It's love that's doing that too, that's teaching you. And, I mean, my grandchildren, I have to teach them all this stuff too. And I keep thinking, oh, and now you have to unlearn it too, but that's life.
So I really thank you for coming to the table and the breakfast table and having a chat.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Richard. I appreciate it. It's been a good talk. But I'm never worried about anybody anymore. I'm never worried about anyone, because I know there's nothing missing and there's nothing needed to be gotten, or that they're free. I know you're free. I know everyone's free. And how sweet for all of us.
How sweet for all of us, and how great to just talk about this and share our perspective on what's already here and what's just here for us to notice too, if we haven't felt we've noticed it. So Brad Scott, so thank you.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Appreciate it.
Thanks to everyone for coming and checking us out on an afternoon. And just keep coming. We'll keep talking, and we'll hook you up to Brad and everyone else that we talk to, and you'll just see that it's already happening. It's already happening within you also. And so thank you, Brad.
Thanks, Richard.